Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Serena Musick is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearance in episode 490 of Boundless Body Radio. Serena Musick is a 51 years young homeschool mom of 4 kiddos living in Virginia. Before coming to a carnivore diet, she endured 35 years of bulimia, chronic undereating followed by bouts of binging, inflammation, anxiety, and carbohydrate addiction, all thanks to her low-fat dieting. Since coming over to the animal-based and carnivore side, Serena has found food freedom and relief from the severe and chronic health issues that she had been trying to deal with. Serena is now a carnivore content creator, sharing her message of health and healing online. She is the host of the Carnivore Revolution page on YouTube and Instagram, both of which are absolutely fantastic, so be sure to go and check those out. I was honored to be hosted on that amazing YouTube channel, Carnivore Revolution, on an episode called Casey Ruff, Carnivore, Abstaining, and Exercise. Serena is also the owner of an amazing tallow-based skincare line, which I absolutely love, called Purely Tallow, which you can find on her website at www.purelytallow.com. Serena Musick, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much. This is one of my favorite places to be.
We're so glad to have you. You put out so much amazing content. If I'm looking especially youthful and sprightly today, it's because I just applied my anti-aging cream, which I absolutely love, your product from Purely Tallow. Thank you so much for doing the tallow line. I do just want to say I'm not an affiliate. I paid for the products at retail to get them. I love your products so much. I use them every single day.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun to come up with the different combinations of essential oils. If people like essential oils or the unscented versions, it's been a lot of fun to come up with all the products.
Yeah, that's awesome. What has been your favorite so far?
My favorite so far is probably the blend of tallow and emu oil to a creamy texture that almost feels like an Aveeno lotion when you put it on, with a little bit of rose oil in it from Bulgaria. That's probably my favorite.
Wow, that sounds really good. That'll be next on my list for sure. One of the things that I ordered from you last time is your night cream. And I've realized it's kind of funny. I have like a pretty specific nighttime routine. And I'll at the end of my night, after everything's done, I'll go and sit in my sauna and hang out there for 20 or 30 minutes. And for whatever reason, it usually makes me so drowsy. I normally just go right up to bed and fall right asleep. And every morning I wake up and see my night cream and I keep getting mad at myself, I keep forgetting to use the night cream, until it dawned on me one day, very recently, just because it says night cream doesn't mean you can't use it during the day, stupid. You can still use this.
That's true. The night cream is a little bit greasier than what I like to recommend for during the day. But if it doesn't feel that way to you, then by all means, you have my permission to use it during the day.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to talk about this more in detail later on in the episode. I really want to learn about the skincare and that kind of thing. But I do have one more question that I just want to ask you. Are people using the tallow products also in their hair? Have you heard a lot about that?
I have heard some people using it in their hair. It helps with flyaways and things like that. But I do have a specific item that I recommend for that over the tallow, which is the emu oil. It's called the hair and beard oil. And the emu oil tends to not be as greasy as tallow does. And so I find that works better in your hair. But I know a lot of people that love the tallow in their hair too.
I absolutely love it too. But now I have 2 new items in my shopping cart. So thank you for that. I'll be ordering that very soon. Good salesperson for sure. You just recently got back from a carnivore retreat, which I would love to hear about. Can you tell me what it was and how you got involved and how things went?
Yeah, no, there were a few vegetables and fruit. It was mostly a carnivore retreat. It was a meat-based retreat, and it's called Wired for Healing, and you guys can look that up on YouTube and on Instagram. It's just a great organization where they do lots of brain retraining things, and so they planned this retreat, and I was honored to be one of the people that they asked to come and speak and present at the retreat. There were lots of people, Dr. Kiltz, Dr. Baker, Courtney Luna was there, Anita, ketogenic woman. She was there. There were so many of us. Emily Penton came. So many people came out to this retreat. Kelly Hogan was there for a day. Lots and lots of names that you would recognize were there. Michelle Hearn came and she presented. It was just an amazing time. The reviews have been great from the people who, were paying guests at the retreat, who came to learn and to hear from the speakers. And I think a lot of healing happened. I've heard from some people that were there that they're able to eat things they couldn't eat before the retreat. There's something about that that brain component that can make such a difference when you kind of get your cup filled up at an event like that, and you learn from all those people, and you get to spend however many days with a group of people that you can see eye to eye on with so many things that you have so much in common with. Once you make this kind of decision for your life to eat just animal products or just meat and eggs or meat, eggs, and cheese, once you make that kind of decision, it really does kind of separate you a little bit from some of the people in your life, not on purpose, but it's a hard thing. And so it's really nice to be able to go and be with all these people for that long and hug people and talk to people and go on. We went on hikes and did a farm tour at a farm in Tennessee, and they took us around and showed us all the animals and showed us how they do things. It was just really an amazing event.
That's awesome. I always get FOMO whenever I see all the pictures of all my friends like hanging out together. I'm like, damn it, I wish I was there. I saw a video of Michelle doing one of her like running workouts. It looked like she was like kind of hopping up a hill, and everybody else like attempting to try to do that same workout with varying levels of success.
It was actually Sean Baker's workout.
Wow.
And Michelle and I were in our room. There were several of us that were all sharing a room. We looked out the window and I was like, what's going on out there? It was pouring down the rain. I was like, what's going on out there? And Michelle was getting ready to go for a run. I was still in my pajamas, and we were like, let's go. And we put our workout clothes on real quick and we ran out there. So we ran backwards up this hill. It was a driveway. It was steep.
It looks steep.
Ran backwards up the hill 5 times. And then we had to hop up the hill. It was all Sean Baker's idea. If you ever have the opportunity to get that kind of a training, do it. It was awesome.
That's amazing. I might use that with some of my clients. I like that.
If you stop, I'm going to make fun of you.
Exactly.
So funny.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about the audience. Like, who showed up to learn from all of you experts? Like, what was it like for the average attendee?
It was a lot of people with things like autoimmune issues, gut issues, people with cancer that just wanted to be surrounded by other people that feel the way they do about nutrition. And there were brand new carnivores there. There was one gentleman came and told me on the first day, he said, I think I'm in the wrong place. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I thought I was coming to a conference, like a convention. He said, I didn't do any research. I didn't really look at the information. I just knew that I'm new at this and I needed to be with our other carnivores. And so I booked it. He said, I really didn't do a lot of research. I didn't read any of the emails she sent. He said, so I'm driving up this winding mountain road thinking there's a convention center at the top of this hill. And he gets up there and he says, so I get out of the car. I said, and he says, I'm thinking I'm just going to squeeze in under the radar. I'm not going to have to talk to anybody. So I get out of the car. I said, and you realize you're in a bunk room. He goes, I'm in a bunk room. I have to talk to people. I had no idea what I was doing. He was completely confused about it. But that's what made it fun for so many people was, people from all different walks of life, were there. Somebody brought their teenage son so he could see, what this was like. He's keto. And so, they're already kind of walking the walk, but it was just really an amazing event, and all the food, is included. So we had the most amazing food. The chef Patty made the most amazing food. We were talking brisket and grilled steaks and burgers. And one night there were scallops. And we're talking about amazing food from some amazing farms that came and sponsored the event and provided some of the food. You can't beat it. You show up, you do nothing except learn and socialize and stuff for 4 or 5 days. It was amazing.
Wow. That sounds incredible. The food sounds really good as well. For the person that you mentioned who kind of found themselves out of place by the end of the conference, I think I know the answer to this question, but by the end of the conference, was that like family to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny. You walk into this place and know hardly anyone. There was nobody there that I had ever met in person except maybe 4 or 5 people that I had met at some of the people I had met at the previous retreat. So that's a cool thing too. You meet these people, you talk to these people online, like JC, Lady Carnivore was there. And when I met her at the retreat last fall, we cried when we hugged each other because we know each other and we talk to each other all the time. And it was just such a relief to see her in person and be able to feel her and give her a hug, And so, by the end you walk in, you don't know any of these people. And then as you're leaving, you're going around and you're hugging everybody goodbye, it was a really awesome experience.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Okay, you mentioned Sean Baker. You mentioned also that some people were eating fruits and vegetables. We're very, very sorry to hear that fruits and vegetables were harmed in this conference.
Yes.
Not
I'm so
something
sorry.
we condone, but we understand.
Absolutely.
Was Sean
Mhm.
Baker super upset to see people consuming plants?
No. Not completely upset. No, it was like literally there was like one of the nights there was some roasted asparagus on the table, and then there was always like some oranges and apples like at the end of the buffet table that somebody who wanted that could pick up. Somebody who didn't know any better might pick up one of those. So there were little bits here and there, and it was just like with dinner they would serve like one vegetable for the people who had introduced vegetables who didn't have a lot of histamine issues with those or things like that.
Besides Sean Baker, any other guests, anybody you observed, was there any kind of judgment one way or another, the people that wanted to do that or people that didn't want to do that?
Not one
Okay.
ounce of judgment on that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm kind of teeing this up because I recently hosted a guest who's been in the carnivore space for a long time. I can't take away from
Mhm.
his experience. I was happy to learn about what he is experiencing. He's
Mhm.
saying that of his people that he's got a medical practice, he's a doctor, and 100% of the people that are doing the strictest version of a carnivore diet are getting nutrient deficiencies. So what he's observing, he's kind of walking back away from carnivore to say you should be animal based, which means you should have somewhere in the realm of 50 to 100 kind of grams of plant matter a day, just kind of depending on whatever. Again, I respect, where he's coming
Mhm.
from. And if he's observing 100% of his patients having that, I totally understand. At first, it was very confusing because I consider carnivore as about 75% or greater of your calories coming from animal foods. So when people
Mhm.
say they're carnivore, I don't automatically imagine that they're 100% strict 100% of the time, right? Like I just don't really
Right.
think that way. And I also have not heard anybody else make those claims that they are noticing nutrient deficiencies in everybody, right? Okay, so here you are, you're at this conference, you're with Sean Baker and Kelly and all these people. They have been carnivore for a very, very long time. Again, regardless of how strict or how kind of liberal you want to be with that definition, again, just your observation. Have you noticed any of that? You've done coaching for a long time. Do you notice any of that? Do you hear people talking about it, or people talking about that at the conference? Or is that just kind of maybe an isolated thing that you can't really relate to?
I think we all have to be our own n equals one experiment, right? Like if you're doing carnivore I'm like you, I haven't heard of anybody saying that carnivore was making them sick or, that they didn't feel good on carnivore. I mean, and that's the truth. I mean, maybe one person in a comment section on one of my videos may have said, I tried carnivore and it made me sick, or I tried carnivore, it didn't work. So I think we all have to be our own kind of experiment. And so, like, if I'm doing carnivore and I'm trucking along and I'm feeling as good as I am right now, I'm 50, I'll be 51 actually. By the time this video comes out, my birthday is May 22nd. So I'll be 51. I am doing some sprinting. I'm not doing a lot of that kind of cardio right now intentionally, not because I can't, I totally could. I am walking every single day, getting my steps in. I am lifting weights 5 times a week. I feel great, right? I feel amazing. And my mental clarity is awesome. And I feel better than I thought I would at 51 and better than I did at 47 before I started carnivore. So I'm feeling great. If I start to feel bad, and I have had a few things that have happened, like my hormones, I'm going through menopause. So I had some hormone issues. And so I've had those things. So I go to the doctor and I have those things checked because I do think there's a place for modern medicine. I do think a doctor can help us. And so I go to the doctor and I have those things checked. Turns out my hormones are out of whack. So that's what the problem is. So I take care of that problem. But if I really wasn't feeling good and the doctors weren't like finding anything, or I went to the doctor and I was very deficient in many vitamins, which has not happened to me since I started carnivore. Before I was doing carnivore, I was juicing, I was eating lots of vegetables, minimal fruits, no regular, like sugar. I was eating lean meats and I was deficient in all. I was on like what most people would consider the perfect like diet. Honestly, the perfect healthy diet. I was been the health nut in every crowd I've ever been in for my entire life, as my entire adult life. So if I wasn't feeling good and as a carnivore and I went to the doctor next year and I was deficient in a bunch of things, you can bet I would change what I was doing. Like, so I haven't heard that coming from a lot of people, though. I haven't heard that coming from anybody that as a carnivore, they went to the doctor and were deficient in a lot of things. I know my folate was just a little bit low, and my vitamin D was just a little bit low. And so those are things that I can correct by just eating more liver, right? I mean, I can do something to fix those. I'm always taking vitamin D because if I don't take it, I am one of those people that is chronically low. Like my vitamin D was 16 at one point, even after being out in the sun all summer. Like at the end of summer, my vitamin D was 16. So I always have to take vitamin D. My doctor told me about 5 years ago that I should just always be on vitamin D. And so, like I said, my B was very low, like almost not even measurable. And my folate was a little bit low. And so I just make sure I eat beef liver at least once a week now, and that'll correct those things, you know. But if I did go to the doctor and found out that I was deficient in a lot of things, then I might believe that, you know, because I am my own experiment and you are your own experiment. And I'd like to believe that if you went to the doctor next month and found out you were deficient in a lot of things and you weren't feeling good, that you would want to fix it. I mean, I think we have to be responsible for our own health. And so I find it hard to believe that this doctor has found that many of his patients, when I don't see people saying that and you don't see people saying that. So I don't know. That just seems odd to me.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I want to give this person space and I respect it, but it's not something I come across. Folate was one that was specifically talked about. We talked about that one specifically. You are supposedly a little bit low. What physical manifestations do you notice? Like, do you notice signs and symptoms of that in your like day to day? Like, is that something you deal with?
No, I mean, I don't know what the signs and symptoms of low folate would it be, but as low as high as it was to still be a little bit low, I don't know that if there were symptoms that you would even notice them with it being, you know, so minuscule of a deficiency. But I don't feel any different now that I'm eating beef liver once a week either. You know what I mean? Like I'm not feeling a whole lot different, but I do know beef liver gives me energy at the time. Like the days that I eat it, I do feel like a little boost in energy, just like I do when I eat sardines. But I don't know that I would notice a low folate. I mean, I guess it'd have to be pretty low or a lot lower than mine was to kind of notice those deficiencies. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't notice anything, and I don't notice a big difference now that I'm eating beef liver once a week either.
Okay, gotcha. I'm seeing, I really want to bang this drum. I've been talking about this a lot recently because I think this is really, really important. Like you see this, there's kind of these sub factions in carnivore and there's a lot of like divisiveness that I don't think should be there. And you see, I would just say like generally there's people that, you know, believe in tracking, you should measure a bunch of stuff and all this. And I know that you have had results with that in the past and tracking your food and whatever, but staying up on your blood work and getting all these analytics done and really like optimizing all these little things by, you know, calculating what your microbiome is or whatever. And then there's just people like Sean Baker or Kelly Hogan or like Lisa Wiedemann. They're like these people that have been on it for a long time. They make it very, very simple. They just say, you know, eat mostly animal products. They never seem to really deal with anything. And so I think it's just interesting to kind of make that observation that yeah, you can test stuff and you can chase things down, but you also kind of don't really have to. There seems to be a lot of people that aren't doing that and they're fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I, like you said, have been through bouts of tracking and not tracking. And once again, I think we have to know ourselves. And so for me, I have a little motto that I like to tell people, and I don't always follow it. And that's where I get into trouble is track it so you can tweak it. And I feel it's the same way with your nutrition, with your blood work, with your macros, with your calories. I feel like those are good. That's good information to have so you can make decisions. And so I don't always track my food, but when I don't track my food, I end up under eating. It's just what I do. It goes back to years of restricting. And so if I go a month without tracking and I start to gain weight, which I gain weight when I under eat, which I know some people say is impossible, but it's certainly not impossible. Calories in, calories out is not always linear and it's not the same for everybody. And so for me, if I'm under eating, I end up gaining weight. And so by the time I realize that I'm under eating, I've already caused some damage. And then when I start tracking, I realize I'm at like 1,000 calories a day. It's easy for me to do that. I get busy. I mean, today it's 1:30 and I've only had breakfast because it's been a busy day. And so that's what I do unless I start thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I haven't eaten again today. I need to go eat something. You know, that's just who I am. Now, am I always like that? No, there have been times where I have binged for days on end where I literally eat, you know, all day long, but that doesn't happen with carnivore. It's with carnivore specifically for me. Although it has happened other times, but specifically with carnivore, because I'm full and I'm satisfied all the time. And the meat lasts, you know, keeps you full for so long. So it's really easy for me to just kind of forget if I'm busy. And I used to like laugh when people would say that. How do you forget to eat? That is so dumb. I used to like, I never forgot to eat until I became a carnivore, you know? But so for me, I have to track sometimes to just keep myself accountable. And so I like to say track it so you can tweak it. Because once again, you're your own science experiment and only you are going to be able to figure out if what you're doing is working. But if you need, if it's not working, if you're not losing weight and that's your goal, or you're not getting well and that's your goal, how do you know what to fix if you don't know what you're doing? And it's the same way with your blood work. If you aren't having your blood work done in regular intervals, a year, 6 months, whatever, how do you know if there's something wrong? You know, I just think it's important to have that blood work checked. I think it's important to sometimes track your food, maybe not always, but I just feel like if you're not doing those things, then how do you know what's not working if something's not working? I feel like it's good to have that data.
That's very well explained. I think that's really reasonable. And I think that's part of the kind of the message I want to get out there is also about like expectations. Like I think a lot of people think we're on the strictest version of carnivore and we're like underwear models all the time or whatever. You know what I mean? Like we're dealing with sugar addiction. We're coming from, you know, crazy health issues. Like people come to this because they're diabetic or they're dealing with like these major big rocks, and like having expectation of like what you said, you feel better at almost 51 than you did 47. That's, you're talking about a progression. It's a kind of a journey. And I want it to be really inclusive. I think about that person who's feeling a little bit weird, driving up to who knows where, someplace in the middle of Tennessee and feeling a little strange or wondering if that person's out of place. And I wonder if that person would have gotten a different message. You have to be very strict and it has to be managed. You got to worry about some of these things versus like, no, we're taking steps. We're moving in a progression. I want that encouraging message to get out so more people find this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't feel like everybody needs to be a carnivore. That's really just, I don't think everybody has to be carnivore. I think where most people need to land, your most average people who don't have like food issues like you and I have had in the past, I think for most people, a really clean, ketogenic, high fat diet without processed junk is the place where most people should end up, and without obviously a lot of carbohydrates. I mean, I feel like for most people, that's going to be a really healthy place. And so that was what it was like, you know, at this retreat. It was like they weren't like intentionally like only pushing carnivore and there was no judgment. And Sally Norton was there. I think I forgot to mention Sally earlier.
You did. Oh, she's the best.
Sally's a rock star.
She's an angel. She's so awesome.
She is the best. So awesome. She was out there doing that workout with us. She is crazy.
No surprise.
Love Sally Norton. So Sally Norton, you know, is not a carnivore. She was feeding people, you know, honey in the kitchen who were really struggling. There were some pretty sick people there. And, you know, she was in the kitchen making them concoctions of, you know, almost like an eggnog with a little bit of honey because she felt like this person needed that little bit of carbs, you know, at that moment. And so I think the judgment is there for a lot of people. But I think what we need to do is we need to relax a little bit about that and meet people where they are. You know, I tell people if they need to keep their diet soda in because that's the only way they can stick with carnivore, then do that. Like, because you're still going to be better off than if they were, you know, going to McDonald's and get the burger with the bun and the fries, which is what most people are doing. And so I think that meeting people where they are, if somebody needs to keep one meal of, you know, whatever, like they need to be able to do carnivore for breakfast and lunch, but for dinner, they want to just eat whatever their family is eating with their family. Fine, do that. You're still going to be better off. And so I think that message tends to get lost a little bit and we push carnivore, push carnivore, push carnivore. But I think a lot of people need carnivore. I think everybody should do carnivore. I mean, I don't mean to like say, oh, nobody needs to do carnivore. I'm saying everybody should do carnivore, but everybody should do it as an elimination diet. And then you decide, do you want to move on from there? Do you want to add some things back in and see how you're feeling? And so I think that's an important message too, is I really believe everybody should do carnivore. I think if everybody did carnivore for 90 days, the pharmaceutical companies would go out of business. Like they would be struggling to survive after 90 days. And then if people want to add some things back in, I think that's probably a good place for a lot of people to start. Now, I have not really done that. I have added in like the Prime protein powder. I have added in Power Pucks, which have a little bit of the protein powder. So they have some natural flavors and some stevia in them. I can drink flavored electrolytes. Like I have been able to add certain things back in that have not caused me to binge or caused me to relapse in any way or have cravings or anything like that. But I have not added back in like a lot of fruits and vegetables. I do eat an artichoke maybe once a month with my kids, a fresh artichoke. So I do that. But other than that, I haven't added a lot of things back in. And that's because for me, I need everything to be compartmentalized. I need everything to be in a box. Like this box has all the animal products in it, and that's where I choose my foods from. It's not like having all of these different options, which is what throws me for a loop. And so I do think that most people, everybody should do carnivore, and most people should end up with a clean ketogenic diet with no processed foods. And we're talking whole fruits and vegetables, not the really starchy ones, not the really carby or sugar filled fruits, but like berries and things like that. And then if you want to do some low carb vegetables, but lots of fatty meat, I feel like that's where everybody should end up. But I don't think we have to be, like super strict on that with people that are just getting started. Like, just meet people where they are. And if they need to keep a few things in, then let's not judge them for that. Let's just be grateful that they're doing what they're doing, and then hope that what happens to them is what happens to most people, which is they start to feel really good and they think, well, how much better could I feel? Like Dr. Chafee says, that last 5% of going carnivore can make 95% of the difference for most people.
Yep.
And I think that's amazing advice. And so a lot of people get to a point where they're keeping their diet soda in, they're keeping like pickles in, they're keeping like certain things in, and then they feel so good. And you just start to think, what if I gave those up for a few weeks? How would I feel? Like it's like a crutch. People keep it. It's like a safety blanket. And I think that's okay.
Yeah. I love that. Again, I find that message to be so much more welcoming. Should you be strict on this? Yeah, for a little while. Try it. Like you said, you're not going to die. Do it. I did it 5 years ago for 30 days, went really strict, and I liked it so much I never stopped. Kind of probably very similar to you. You have a different story, but and then we can relax the definition of what carnivore is and include so many more people. Because again, like go walk around the mall, go see what people are buying at the grocery store. It's a disaster. It's terrible. And if you just move a little bit in this direction, you might start feeling better. It might motivate you to do more. And I think getting that kind of message out is much more kind and inviting for people.
Yeah, I agree. And you go to the comment section of anybody's post on, on Instagram or Facebook, and you're going to have people battling out, what is the true definition of carnivore. And people get all over me if I post, a plate of whipped cream that I ate that had a little bit of cocoa powder in it. Like, oh my goodness, like people just go nuts. That's not carnivore. That's more like keto. You know what? I classify myself as a carnivore. I am 99% carnivore. Using a little bit of a beef isolate protein powder that has a little bit of natural flavor and a little bit of stevia in it does not make me not a carnivore. It makes me a carnivore that can, which I never thought would be possible, but can stray just a little bit. I can moderate just those few things I mentioned, but even with the artichokes, I tend to eat more than I should of the artichoke. It's definitely not something I want to do on a regular basis, but it's something that my kids and I enjoy. I steam the artichokes. We sit around the table together with our plates and we dip the leaves in butter and and eat the meat on the leaves. And we do that. We sit around and we talk. And that's like a fun thing. My kids love it. If I'm at the store and I find an artichoke like this big, you can bet I'm buying it. And I'll buy 4 or 5 of them and I'll come home and my kids get so excited, you bought artichokes. And that's what we do. That's our evening. Like we sit around and we eat our artichokes and talk. And so that for me, that's a heart thing. Right. And so I can do that and not have a huge problem with it. And I don't notice a difference the next day. I don't wake up swollen or achy or anything like that. So I think that, people get carried away with the descriptions, of things. And I know a lot of people have given up their title of carnivore because of stuff like that. And I just think, you know what, that's fine. But I'm a carnivore, I'm a carnivore through and through. It'll be 3 years for me. And so I love it. And I love how it makes me feel. And so I'll be a carnivore that uses a little bit of protein powder and eats an artichoke once a month.
We won't get too upset about that. That sounds really lovely. A great way to spend time with your kids as well. Yeah, I love that. I think, again, getting that message out will help a lot of other people out there to remember to just kind of relax a little bit. It's also very interesting. Maybe you could comment on this as well, like the types of foods that people bring in. I hear things like fruit. I hear things like honey. The people that I know that ended up reintroducing ultra processed foods usually didn't do great with that and have maybe gone off the path for several years. It's a really hard thing to kind of get back on when you start to bring back on. But I don't know of many people who went like really hard back into things like vegetables. And I don't hear hardly anybody say like, oh, I'm missing fruits and vegetables. I'm going to have a salad with my steak. Like I don't hear much of that. Do you hear any of that?
Not a lot, no. But honestly, if I was going to cheat or if I was going to, go off, I think I might have a salad though, but it's not worth it to me. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like I miss the crunchy, cold part of a salad. But not enough to like try it and upset my stomach. And you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I don't hear a lot of that. I mostly hear of people who will have some berries and see how that makes them feel and things like that. So yeah, I don't hear that a lot either about people adding like all kinds of stuff in. Some people do add in like the milder vegetables, but it's just not worth it to me with the oxalates and all of that. Like if I was going to do something, it would be a couple of handfuls of blueberries. But the problem is I probably couldn't stop at a couple of handfuls of blueberries. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I could do that. And so for me, it's just better to abstain from almost everything. And the only things that I have found, and I have tried to incorporate things here and there. And it just doesn't work out well for me. It just doesn't.
Interesting. Okay. A part of what I'm doing this summer is I'm introducing to my neighborhood a summer nutrition seminar series. It's one that I taught when I was at the corporate gym that I was at. I had no idea I was doing it. I just did it during the summertime by the pool when everything was a little bit more chill with my business. And as I'm going through the content of that, I'm really trying as best I can to be like really diet agnostic and try not to push one agenda over another. But when you start to go through some of the principles of like, these are what calories are, this is what macronutrients do, this is how fasting works. Like when you start to get into the weeds of some of these things, it's so interesting how it does kind of almost like back you into that type of a corner where it's like you're kind of only left with this thing. And you told us your full story last time you came on and how that was very much the case for you. Other foods like really didn't go that well for you and backed you into a corner of like, okay, well now I'm doing this. Am I going to die of a heart attack or whatever? So
Right.
remind our listeners of your personal story, how you got into carnivore to begin with, and then let's get an update on the absolutely horrific condition that you told us about last time. Parosmia, I think I can pronounce it a lot better than now than I did then. But anyway, tell us about your journey into carnivore, how that all started, and any updates you have for us.
Yeah, so I bought my first diet pills when I was 12, if that gives you any idea of what my background must be like. Dieted every single day, probably until I was 47, except when I was pregnant. With my first child, I gained 80 pounds because I wasn't dieting. And so that's what that does for me. So if that gives you any idea, I gained 80 pounds in 9 months while I was pregnant. And, only 10 or 12 of that was gone, after I had my first child. So the rest of that was real weight that I had gained. That's what would happen if I wasn't dieting all the time. And that was scary for me. But in any case, so I was on a diet every time, every minute of every day for basically my whole life, unless I was binging, right? Because then I wasn't restricting at that point. And then, except when I was pregnant with my first child. With the other children, I learned to watch it just a little bit more. I gained 60 pounds and then 50 pounds and then 40 pounds. So I learned a little bit along the way, but not enough. And so I struggled with eating disorders. I was bulimic for years. And even once that stopped, the restriction and the binging and then the restriction, and I would fast for several days because I had gone off the rails one day, and then I was juice fasting all the time. Like I was just, you name the diet, I had done it, from the cabbage soup diet to Weight Watchers to Jenny Craig to, fast alternate day fasting. I mean, I had done everything. And I was only ever, aside from my pregnancies, I was only ever maybe 10 or 15 pounds, that I wanted to lose, but it was a constant struggle because I wasn't doing it right. I didn't have the tools that I needed, even though I thought that I did. And so back at the beginning when the virus started going around, and I'm not going to name the virus because I don't want to get you banned.
Yeah, thank you.
But I won't say it. But that terrible virus, I got it that first winter in December. And I was in bed for 11 days with this sickness, lost my taste and smell, which came back very muted for about 3 months. And then one day I woke up and things tasted and smelled. The way I could describe it at the time was like a rotten skunk carcass somebody had lit on fire. It was the most horrendous smell I had ever smelled in my life. It was so bad. And it took me a little while to realize what was going on. I came downstairs that morning when I got up, and my husband, I was like, did the dog get sprayed by a skunk? And he said, no. And I said, what is that smell? He said, I don't know. I just made some coffee. I don't smell anything. And I was like, no way. Sure enough, it was the coffee. And so after that, I started doing research, found out it's called parosmia, and it's distorted taste and smell. I also had, I think I'm saying this right, phantosmia, which is phantom smells. And so I could smell gasoline and cigarette smoke just sitting on the couch in my house. I would always have to say, does anybody else smell gas? Very scary because, there were times where I was alone. I would wake the kids up. If my husband was out of town, I would wake the kids up and be like, come downstairs and tell me if you smell gas. It was pretty bad. I couldn't smell when things were burning on the stove. I could have started a fire. I could have burned my house down and I wouldn't even have noticed that there was a fire because there were certain smells I just couldn't smell. And then I was sad. I was depressed for months. just constantly trying new foods, smelling things, trying to eat things. And instead of losing weight, I was gaining weight though, because the only thing that tasted and smelled good to me was things with sugar in it, like homemade baked goods and things like that. And I was in some groups on Facebook, and there were people across the board starving to death, basically on a feeding tube because they couldn't eat anything. And then there were people who were gaining 100 pounds in 6 months because they could only eat sugar like me. And so it was my birthday weekend. I was turning 48, and my girls have a gluten-free baking business. And so they were going to make me some cupcakes, my favorite cupcakes in the whole world. And I asked them to double the batch, and they did. And I proceeded to eat 20 cupcakes in 36 hours. I was over a weekend. And so I woke up on Monday and decided I had to do something different, that I had to give up the sugar and the carbs. Like I couldn't eat fruits and vegetables because they tasted and smelled rotten. Popcorn, peanut butter, coffee, anything that was roasted, garlic, onion. So that takes a lot of things off the table when all of those things taste and smell like a rotten skunk carcass. And so I knew I could eat a hamburger fresh off the grill, but I couldn't refrigerate it and reheat it, some sort of chemical reaction that makes it smell like a skunk. And I could eat a New York strip, but not a ribeye. And so that was what I ate. I woke up that day and decided that was what I was going to do. It was a very hard day for me. And I remember like thinking, what's going to happen to me if I just eat those things? And so I started Googling it, and that's where I found Sean Baker on Joe Rogan's podcast. I found Kelly Hogan, Loris. I found so many people at that point, and I started watching these videos, and Michaela Peterson, and I was like, wait a minute, people live like this? People just eat meat? So I'm not going to die if I do this for a little while. And so I started right away. I started that day. And eventually, like within a couple of months, I was able to add eggs in. I couldn't add chicken in for about 6 months. I mean, I was on a very limited diet at that point. I couldn't even eat cheese in the beginning because cheese tasted and smelled the same way. I remember very vividly making the charcuterie board tray for we homeschool. And so our daughters were going to their formal that year. And I remember making the charcuterie board and thinking I wasn't going to get through it because the processed meats, the salami and the pepperoni and the ham and the turkey, all that stuff smelled like skunk to me. And the cheese was the worst. I had to slice all these cheeses and put them on the tray. It was horrible. And there were lots of instances like that over that time period of a few months there. And it was about 6 months into Carnivore that I heard somebody talking about the difference between an abstainer and a moderator. And I thought, wait a minute. That's what's wrong with me all these years, is that I'm an abstainer. Like I had no idea that was a thing. And it was like this light bulb moment for me. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's why I'm better. Like I didn't realize I was better. I didn't realize that I wasn't obsessing about food, that I wasn't binging. I didn't realize that until that moment that I felt better, that I wasn't sick anymore. And so that was when I realized that for the first time, since I was a kid, the shackles and chains were gone, that I had food freedom. And I had heard people talk about that, but it didn't occur to me until that moment when I heard about the difference between an abstainer and a moderator. And so I've been carnivore ever since, like I said, 3 years, and I feel amazing. And so if you're out there struggling with eating disorders or disordered eating, like it doesn't have to be an eating disorder. It doesn't have to be anorexia or bulimia or anything like that. It can be just that you're constantly on a diet, or you're constantly restrictive, or you're constantly obsessed with losing the last 10 pounds. There is hope, because this fixed it for me. Now, it wasn't all, roses for me there in the beginning. I did gain 18 pounds in the beginning. I mean, that's part of my story. I have to say that. I was under eating though, even at the very beginning of Carnivore, which I believe caused me to gain weight. Under eating, over fasting, just doing a lot of things. I messed up my hormones. So for 4 months, I reverse dieted. I fixed that. And then I was able to reduce my calories a little bit and I ended up losing 35 pounds. Oh, wow. And then I did gain some back because of too much dairy. And I went back to under eating, which is why I say track it so you can tweak it. And now I'm like 8 pounds from, being back to my lowest weight. And so Carnivore works though. Carnivore works mentally. It works physically. It can change your life, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. What an amazing story. Any updates on the parosmia?
Yes, in July of last year, I had made on a Tuesday, I remember, because it was such a big deal. I had made taco burgers for my family on the grill. And at that point, I could eat taco seasoning, but it wasn't really pleasant. You know what I mean? Like, so I had made burgers for everybody, and it wasn't like normal, And then on Thursday, I just, like once a week, I would open up a jar of peanut butter and smell it and see if it smelled like peanut butter, because that was one of the things that was so horrible. And so just on Thursday, just on a whim, I opened up a jar of peanut butter to smell it. And I thought, I think that smells like peanut butter. Like, I think it smells like I remember peanut butter smelling. It was really weird to not be sure if you remember what something is supposed to smell like after that
Wild.
long,
Yeah.
2 years and 8 months. And so I stood at the refrigerator and I thought, okay. And I opened up a jar of salsa and it smelled like salsa. And then tomato spaghetti sauce smelled like spaghetti sauce. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I sobbed for about 10 minutes, opening up different containers of things, opening up the garlic and the onion powder, like all the things that I had smelled for the last 2.5 years that had smelled so horrible. And it was just an amazing, I cried and cried. I immediately made myself a cup of decaf, so I could taste coffee. And because I had given up coffee about a year and a half before that. And so it was amazing. I cried and cried. It was pretty awesome.
That's amazing. That reminds me of like Willy Wonka and like the schnozberries taste like
Yeah.
schnozberries or something, like going around
Yes.
tasting everything. That's amazing.
What it
So,
like.
so glad that's passed. Hope that never comes back. We know it's kind of the symptoms of some of those things can kind of come and go. You mentioned
Yeah.
something earlier that I really want to touch on as well, which is eating disorders. I think even for people that haven't been diagnosed or can say they haven't been bulimic or anorexic, I think if you're into fitness and health and nutrition to some degree, you probably think about this a lot, and there's been maybe some demons or battles that you've had in your life. I can certainly point to mine and say like, yeah, I don't know how to go as far as saying like disordered eating, but it's definitely like an obsession. I think about it all day, every day, my entire life. That's all I do. And I wonder how you think about the term like orthorexia, when people are obsessively focusing on certain food groups, deliberately avoiding other certain food groups, and how that relates to eating disorders. Do you consider that like eating disorder to be able to just basically shun an entire complete like group of food, like most, if not all plants, to exclude them? Do you consider that a form of disordered eating, or is it still disordered eating, but it plays into your hands because it makes you feel healthy? Or do you not consider it that way? Do you not see it that way?
No, I don't see it that way. I also don't think people that are vegans, like the same people that would come at you and me and say, oh, you have orthorexia, you have a problem, are the same people that would completely condone vegans or vegetarians, right? Like they don't say that they have that problem. And I don't think they do. I think vegans and vegetarians honestly think that they are making the right decision for their health and for the environment, because that's what we've been told. And so I think it's the same way for us. And we've experienced it now and honestly do feel better this way. And so I think it's unfair to call, I think orthorexia is more like when somebody decides they're only going to eat now and laters for the rest of their life. Like they're only going to eat this certain kind of candy, or they're only going to eat bread for the rest of their life. I think that's different than choosing an animal-based diet or even a plant-based diet because you feel like that's what's best for your health. Now, I don't think people should be vegan or plant-based or vegetarian. I really don't. I feel like it is really hard on your body. The two of the essential things that we need are proteins and fats, and you're just not going to get those naturally with those diets. And so I don't like put people down really for being a vegetarian or a vegan or plant-based, but I think that you have to face the facts. If you're on a diet that needs lots of supplementation, like vitamins, and I see videos from vegans, I see them, and they have shelves and shelves of supplements lined up, all these powders that they use, and the greens and the reds, and they've got all this stuff that they take, all these special things. And I think that's the really cool thing about being on the carnivore diet is you don't usually need to supplement with anything. And I take vitamin D, and that's fine because my body, I need that. But I think that to say that vegan or vegetarian or carnivore is an eating disorder, I just think is a really unfair statement, because these things are things that we are doing for our health and things that we have seen a benefit from. And I know lots of people on the other side, the vegans and vegetarians, they see lots of benefit. And I think the main thing for people is that we give up all those processed foods, or most of them, and we give up, the carbohydrates. And I think that can make a big difference for the carnivores. But even the people on the other side with a plant-based diet, they're going to see improvements, at least in the beginning, because they're giving up all the processed junk. And people will say that to me, and I'm sure they say that to you, but even vegans can see a difference, right? That's true. But the time will tell. And so a lot of times vegans and vegetarians eventually start having health trouble. I do not see a lot of that from people that are carnivores. Now, are there plant-based people that have been plant-based for 20 and 30 years and still have good blood work and still feel really good? Yeah, there are. I don't think that any of those classifications, though, would constitute an eating disorder. I think if somebody has an eating disorder, you know that they do. You know what I mean? Like I think that, that's a mental thing, more than a physical thing. And I think that if somebody has an eating disorder, there are other mental traits that carnivores don't have. Like we all talk about the mental clarity and how we can remember things so much better than we used to. And I like to give the example of like when you're trying to log into a website and they text you a 6-digit code that you have to remember to type it on your phone. Like I used to panic. That used to be hard for me to remember that 6-digit code and put those numbers in. And I remember noticing one day a couple of years ago that I don't panic anymore when that little thing comes down from the top of the screen when I'm trying to log into a website or something. And so I don't think it can be considered orthorexia. I mean, I just think that's a silly thing to say about somebody who chooses the healthiest foods that they can eat, the most nutrient dense foods with the most bioavailable nutrition. I don't think that's a fair term for us.
Yeah, very well explained. I love that insight. And I mean, I guess you mentioned the physical, you mentioned the mental. There's also, the carnivore zen, the emotional side of things, the spiritual side of things, which I believe there's definitely a component of eating this way, that everything just seems to feel better. Stress is less. You don't worry about things as much. Like you can handle things, you can problem solve so much better. The physical aspect of you doing, Sean Baker's workouts at 51 and hopping up hills and all kinds of stuff. That's awesome. And that's great to be able to do that. And your body doesn't hurt, your joints don't hurt, like all of those things. That's all awesome, but also to feel that connectedness and that presence and understand that, having time with your kids is so valuable and really appreciate that more. I think that's where the real kind of joy in eating this way comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I have more energy to do those things. I have friends that can't get up and down off the floor, when they're playing with their grandkids. And that's one of my goals is I still want to be able to run around with my grandkids in the yard and be able to play with them. And, I think that people just don't put enough stock in our nutrition. People really don't think that what we eat affects us in that way. And it affects us probably more than anything else except sleep. It's probably even sleep and food. But our nutrition is so important. And I think if we want to be able to live our lives to the fullest, we have to pay attention to that. We have to feed our bodies what our bodies need.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you fix the nutrition, it pretty much will handle the sleep component for you. I think in your experience, you would agree with that.
I think that's amazing. And the other thing that helps is paying attention to your body and the signs. And if it's not working, do something else that does. I wasn't sleeping great for a while there. And I added in some blueberries. I added in some avocado to see if, a lot of people say that you'll get like a cortisol spike in the middle of the night. And that can be like a little bit of carbs before bed can help. And so I tried that and it didn't work, but I wasn't done experimenting. And I bought a castor oil pack and I wear that every night as I go to bed now. And that made a huge difference. And so I think there are other things that we can do that can really help. Like you can't go into carnivore and say, this is just going to fix everything. And if it doesn't, I'm just going to quit. You might fix a lot of stuff with carnivore and there still might be a few other things that you need to, tweak or get better at in order for things to work. So I don't think it's a cure all, but I do think for most of us, it fixes just about everything. And then there might be a few little lingering things or things that pop up along the way. And some of that can be the cortisol, or it can be, some glucose spikes here and there because you're eating a little bit too much protein, or it can be oxalate dumping, that happens after you've given up all the vegetables that cause oxalate buildup in our bodies. And, so I think there are other things along the way. And if anybody is strong enough and willing enough to try carnivore, I hope that they're willing enough and strong enough to go that extra mile if they find out that carnivore isn't fixing everything, but stick with carnivore still, or at least a very low carbohydrate, ketogenic diet, because being in ketosis is our natural state. When a baby is in the womb, a baby is in ketosis. As a baby is growing in its mother's belly in the womb, it is in ketosis. When it's born, it is in ketosis. And if a baby is nursing, the baby stays in ketosis until we introduce foods. And so I don't know why we have such a hard time believing that ketosis is our natural state. And so I think that's an important, compound too. It's something to remember is that ketosis is our natural state, but it doesn't mean it's going to fix everything. There can be years of damage that we're trying to fix once we go into the carnivore way of eating. And so I think that's important to remember that there might be some other things that you have to do along the way, but that doesn't mean the carnivore diet isn't working, right?
Love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. Okay, so you're eating animal products and now we're putting animal products on our skin. Tell us about Purely Tallow, how that came up and why you've decided to pursue, making this and sending this out. It's a wonderful product. I absolutely love it. Like I said, no affiliation, but I'm a very happy customer.
Thank you so much, Casey. So my girls, I mentioned earlier, they have a gluten-free baking business, and for about 5 years, starting when they were 9 and 11, they set up at our local farmers market all summer on Saturdays. So we homeschool, so we incorporated that into our homeschool. They would bake all day on Friday, and we would go to the market on Saturday. And when they were younger, like 9 and 11, they needed me, right? Like I would cut up the samples for them and put the toothpicks in it. And would sit behind them. If anybody had questions they couldn't answer, I would answer the questions and things like that. But by the time they were like 11 and 13 or 12 and 14, they really didn't need me anymore. So I just asked for a booth because I obviously wasn't going to leave them at the farmer's market by themselves. So I asked for a booth too. And that was during the pandemic. So I was selling mask spray at that point. And then when that ended, I did like some decorative spoons with beads on them, and those sold pretty well. And then I started selling coconut oil lotions, and those sold pretty well too. And then I became a carnivore, and I started hearing about tallow products. And I thought, beef fat on your skin, really? Like, how is that possible? So I started making some, and I started taking it to the market, and I would pretty much sell out just about every time I set up at the market, which was a really neat feeling, to be providing this, thing that obviously was a niche thing, but there are certain people who really liked it, whether it was because it was natural or because it was different, whatever. And I started just mentioning it, on Instagram some, and I would sell lotions every time I mentioned it. And so I started making videos about it. And every time I posted a video, I would sell some lotions. And then I went to go visit the Power Puck people, Matt and Allison, who live in Colorado. They had a meetup there last fall. And so I went there for the meetup and I watched them run their little business. And I just thought, why am I not doing that? Why am I not scaling this? Right? Like, if people buy it every time I post, why am I not posting more? Why am I not trying to sell more of this lotion? People really like it. And so I came back from that trip and just got more serious about it, started selling more, and bought the label maker and changed the name, and just started, trying to make that business grow. And it's really been a lot of fun to watch it. You have some, I like how we both have tallow lotions behind us
Absolutely.
in the back. So show people what it looks like. It's really white and fluffy. It actually looks a lot like whipped cream. Very light and fluffy and not greasy. And I'm really trying to kind of stand apart from some of the other companies. A lot of the other companies use coconut oil, jojoba oil, and olive oil in their products. And I'm really my goal is to not do that. So when I found a need for another liquid oil to use, I chose emu oil. Emu oil has a lot of great properties for your skin too. It's very healthy, very healing for your skin. And so I started putting emu oil in certain products to kind of change the texture of them, like the night cream that you like so much, and the facial oil cleanser that you can use to take off your makeup. That one does have a little bit of castor oil in it, for the properties that you can find in castor oil that you can't find like in the tallow. It's really greasy and it's got a lot of vitamins in it. So I felt like it was worth it to go ahead and add the castor oil to the facial oil cleanser, but that's the only product that it's in. And I have an unscented version of all of the products in case somebody wants just the natural version, whether it's emu oil or the tallow-based products. And then I do have some scented ones if people are okay with essential oils. And I use the best essential oils. I use doTERRA, super high quality. And then just recently I bought some rose oil from a rose plantation in Bulgaria. And so I have some rose oil scented items too. Rose oil is really great for your skin also. So I try to pick the essential oils that I use based on the product that I'm going after. It's not like just willy-nilly. I don't just choose lavender because lavender smells good and people like lavender. I chose lavender because lavender is really good for your skin and reducing fine lines and wrinkles and healing, and it's great for acne. And so like I'm choosing the essential oils that I'm choosing to go in them on purpose because they have a purpose with the product that it's in. And so if that helps anybody make their decision about which companies to choose, I am really trying to stick with mostly animal-based. The facial oil cleanser has, and I think the night cream has wild camel hump fat in it also, because that's really good for healing. And then some of the products, like the lip balm actually has goose fat in it also, because goose fat is really good at protecting from and healing of cold sores. And so I went ahead and included that in the lip balm. And so I've spent a lot of time and effort coming up with the products, and I love them, and I'm glad other people love them.
Yeah, I absolutely love them. I do love my lip balm. This stuff lasts forever, by the way. You're going to put yourself out of business because like I use this every day. I've used it for months and there's barely just like a little bit taken from the top. It lasts a really, really long time.
No, it's just sell in smaller containers.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Keep your business going. And I'm really fortunate. So I buy your skincare products. My wife's sister also makes soaps and deodorant. So I use a magnesium deodorant, which I really love that she makes.
Yeah.
She does some plant-based soaps and also some grass-fed beef tallow soaps. And I in the past, I just bought like either one and not really thought too much about it. One has coconut oil, the other has the beef tallow. And they both have a lot of fat in there and both make really nice soap. But I've noticed over time as I've been more and more picky about the stuff that I'm willing to put in my body and on my body, the difference between the plant-based soap and the animal-based soap, the tallow-based soap, is so different. Like after a hockey game, like washing myself and my hair with this tallow-based soap, my skin is just like glowing, radiating, like it feels like it's singing or something afterwards. What is it specifically about tallow that's so different to even something that is a very like high saturated fat type based product that comes from kind of coconuts? What's missing?
So, an animal-based fat obviously is going to be, well, I guess it's not obvious because most people don't know, but on a cellular level is going to be so much better for your skin because on a cellular level, it more matches the what our skin is made of, it matches our cells better. And so your body just absorbs that beef tallow so much better. Like coconut oil tends to leave you greasier than beef tallow does. Beef tallow has vitamins in it, it has collagen in it. So, we pay extra money for all of these lotions and skincare products that we see the commercials for. Oh, it has retinol. It has, we've added vitamin E and we've added vitamin, all of these vitamins that are added to it. But beef tallow already has that in it. So wouldn't it be better to use a one ingredient item for our skin? Because unlike you, like our toxic load is so heavy. Anywhere that we can reduce that toxic load, like especially for somebody with autoimmune diseases or allergies or asthma, our toxic load is huge just from being in the environment, just from being on earth. We have this weight pushing down on us, like not just gravity, like other things, like pushing down on us. Our bodies are so overwhelmed with everywhere you look, the toxins. We watch TV and you get a candy commercial followed by a drug commercial, followed by a commercial for a toxic cleaner, right? Literally, like almost everything in our life is toxic. And so that puts this pressure on your body, especially people, like I said, with like autoimmune conditions and things like that. And so it's like you add one more thing, your bucket starts to overflow. So you're eating all these processed foods, you're using all of these toxic products. And then it's like all of a sudden you have all these autoimmune issues. If you can figure out a way to fit everything back into your bucket, that's going to help you and make you just a little bit healthier, right? And so if you can eliminate the toxic cleaning products by using things like vinegar and baking soda for cleaning your house instead, and do yourself a favor and get yourself one of those steel wool scrubbers to scrub your bathroom with, like your shower and stuff, instead of using the toxic cleaners, you won't believe how easy it is to clean your shower without all that toxic stuff. If you can use a natural skincare product, make sure you use something with tallow. Make sure you use purely tallow skincare. There are other companies out there though that have very good natural oils and lotions and things like that that you can use on your body. If you can reduce some of the toxins in what you eat, like instead of using a boxed pizza crust, make it yourself from scratch. If you're not going to be carnivore and you're not going to be low carb, at least make your items from scratch. There's a huge difference between chocolate chip cookies that you make in your house from the 8 ingredients. Now, granted, you want those ingredients to have minimal ingredients in them, right? But there's a huge difference between making those chocolate chip cookies at your house, buying each of the 8 ingredients versus buying a tube of chocolate chip cookie dough, right? That's going to reduce your toxic load a little bit. Like everywhere that you can reduce that toxic load, it's going to help you. And so maybe my lotions help you reduce that toxic load a little bit. I really think if people would pay attention to how they feel and eliminate some of the things, you would realize that you're feeling better, even if you don't want to be a carnivore, but you want to clean your house with natural products and start using natural skincare products. That's going to make a difference. I mean, lots of kids have ADD and ADHD because of the products that we're using. Your plugins in your wall, your fabric softener, the fabric softener that you use, that wonderful fresh laundry smell that we all love so much is actually the number one cause of indoor air pollution. Like that is huge. That is huge. And lots of kids are taking medicine for attention deficit disorder because of the products that are being used in their home. And so that's a really scary thing. It's the products, it's the food, all of that is a huge component of how we feel and our autoimmune diseases and how our bodies deal with those things. So any place you can start to reduce some of those things is going to make a difference in your life.
I love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, for somebody like me who cooks with beef quite a bit, I've saved up quite a bit of tallow that I don't necessarily cook with a lot. I'll sometimes recondition a cast iron pan or something. I'll use it for that. Could somebody do this at home pretty easily with just any kind of beef fat or beef tallow that they've rendered out? Or do you really need to have like a specific product?
No, I mean, you can just use the beef tallow that have at your house. It has to be room temperature to whip, but it can't be like too warm and it can't be too cold. It has to be just kind of room temperature to get it to whip. But you can use that beef tallow without even whipping it. You can use that as lotion. It's just, if it's not whipped, it tends to be a bit greasier. The whipped really is like the perfect texture for your skin. And so, yeah, I mean, anybody can do it, but don't, because it won't come in a cute little jar with a pretty label on it.
Exactly. Yeah, you really need the label. The labels, I do have to say, the labels are awesome, by the way. Your rebranding was really, really well done. I love the labels. What about like this smell? If somebody were to do that, like, do they get kind of like a beefy smell? Do they need to like filter this somehow or cook it in a different way? Or literally you could just use it as is?
You can just use it as is. There is a way to wash it though. And what you would do is you would melt it and then you would add water to it, because water and oil don't mix. And so then you would put it in the refrigerator and let it harden. And then you would peel the tallow off of the top. And then you could dump the water and then you could put the tallow back in the pot with some fresh water and melt it on the stove and put it back in the refrigerator, let it harden again. There is a way that you can wash it and that takes some of the beefy smell out of it.
Well, I would just recommend like you just go to your site and buy the product. The thing that really surprised me too about the whipped tallow is how long it stays whipped. I mean, I'm telling you, this stuff lasts for a really, really long time. I bought a batch a year ago after we first chatted, and I still have some of it. And like it's still whipped. Like it doesn't like soften or settle.
Yeah.
It stays pretty well whipped. I've been really impressed with that.
Yeah, and if it gets warm though, it will melt. It's still usable if that happens. It's just that it's not going to be whipped anymore. It's going to be just like normal tallow if it melts. And so starting yesterday, when we sent out lotions, we sent them with ice packs in them to prevent the melting. So all of the whipped tallow lotions for the summer and probably pretty good ways into fall will come with ice packs in the boxes to keep that from happening. But if you do get it and it melts, it's still usable. But yeah, it just won't be a whipped texture anymore.
Awesome. Well, I know that probably comes at an extra cost to you, but that is very thoughtful of you. This has been an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with you over the years. Love messaging you back and forth about certain things we're thinking about. And yeah, consider you a very dear friend. Hopefully we can do a retreat together sometime and meet in person. I would absolutely love that. For now, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and the website is Purely Tallow. On Instagram and Facebook, it's Purely Tallow Skincare. The website is just purelytallow.com. And then you can find me at the Carnivore Revolution on YouTube and serena.carnivore on Instagram.
Awesome. We will link to all of that in the show notes. Like I said, Serena, it's always a joy to catch up with you. Definitely very jealous that you just got back from a retreat with all of our favorite people. But I just think, again, I think of that guy who thought he was in the wrong place and got to meet so many other people that were down to earth and wonderful and loving. And just the way this community has been in my experience has just been absolutely amazing. And I really hope he takes that from that experience and improves his health and improves the health of the people around him, because that's what's so important. And I just love your message. I love your product. So thank you so very much for taking time out of your very, very busy life to be on our show today. We just really, really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and I was so glad you asked me.
Such a joy to have you back. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. Thank you so very much for listening to and supporting Boundless Body Radio. This podcast is such a passion of mine, one of my favorite parts about running our business, and none of this would be possible without our incredible guests and listeners like yourself. Thank you so very much for all of the amazing reviews that we get on Apple and Spotify. Trust me, we read them all, and it means the world to hear that you are enjoying the show as well. I am very excited to announce that this summer I will be hosting a nutrition seminar series. This is actually a project that I started after I became certified as a nutrition coach. I wanted to get a group of people together to discuss all aspects of human nutrition, and as a bonus, I did the whole thing outside by a pool, which was great. After the pandemic, I stopped hosting the series, but this year I've decided to bring it back. Each week, we'll have a particular topic and an agenda. We'll have outlines that include references, and also meal plans, guest appearances, book giveaways, and more, all for free. For those of you who live in the Salt Lake City area, the seminars will be hosted every Tuesday at noon, starting on May 28th, and will run all the way until September 3rd. The seminar will be hosted outside, of course, at the beautiful Bowery Park in Daybreak, where I live. If you're available and in the area, we would absolutely love to see you there. If you are unable to attend, either that day and time does not work for you, or you don't live in the area, good news for you as well, we are going to put all the recordings and post them on YouTube, where you can submit listener questions in the comment section, which we can address in future seminars. I'm also including all of the seminar materials on our website, so you don't have to miss out on the content. My goal is to make a comprehensive yet simple understanding of nutrition so that anybody confused about how they should eat can create a framework for themselves based on their individual goals. As I said, if you're interested in participating, we'd love to have you. If you can't make it into the in-person seminar, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also our website at myboundlessbody.com/seminar to find all of the resources, videos, and a fun quiz. Either way, thank you as always for listening to Boundless Body Radio.